To my podcast, Xponential Intelligence. Today, I'll be sharing with you my second near-death experiences, the science behind NDEs, and then my abilities that I honed after my second near-death experience. And we'll just jump right in. If you haven't heard the first NDE experience, I highly encourage you to do that before you listen to the second NDE. It gives you a point of reference. So the second NDE experience for me was really interesting because, the first NDE really allowed me to understand, say, the concept of time and how time is involved in everything. Okay, and again, just a little pre-frame before we go into the second NDE. So the first NDE happened to me in my early 20s, about 22, 23, around that time, where I was really searching for life, really wanting to understand, that one equation that solves for life, having a joyous or limitless self of being. So that first NDE answered those questions for me. And through the span of time between the first and the second near-death experience, the second near-death experience happened to me in my early to mid 40s, again, about 20 years worth of time. And throughout that time, I started to see life very, very differently. And what's most important in an NDE is what happened prior to your NDE. So through those 20 years, my abilities came about. I could sense people, I could sense their future vision or have future visions of a person. Like, for example, I would see a stranger and go, oh, that person's, gonna get hit by a car. Or, something will happen, and then a few minutes later or a day later, with my friends and so on, like, a friend calls me up. It's like, wow, their mother's gonna get ill, and then like a week later, it's like, hey, Moss, I don't know what happened, but my mother is ill. So it started to, say, open up or unravel the matrix of this reality for me. So those 20 years, and it gets really confusing because, we think this reality is really solid, and we're convinced that it's solid, and we're convinced that if we do action X, Y is going to take place. But for the most part, it really doesn't, right? You might get the results, but the end result, the real end results of, say, who you are, the completeness of who you are, again, fails. So, and that's what was happening to me. The relationships failing, because relationships, the way we see it, is at our limited self, or the version of relationships that most people live is at the limited self. The version that most people accumulate money or create success or create knowledge or intelligence or have a fantastic experience, even like sex, is the limited version of who we are. And it really bothered me, those 20 years. It's like, shit, it's like, I should be having a fantastic time. I've got everything that I need. I was blessed in a family. It wasn't abusive or anything like that. A great father, great mother. We all have problems, but again, overall, great father, great mother, great family, great upbringing, great socioeconomic status and all that. But I was starting to see that was just like the packaging, and you tear off the package and then you look inside and it's like, oh crap, what's going on here? Why am I not happy? And this is where a lot of people who have NDE experiences go into that, say, spiral downward. And there's a lot of, say, crisis centers for people who've had NDE, a lot of therapy sessions for people who've had NDE, and I was going down that path, and nobody really understands why, and I can explain it briefly for you before I get to my second near-death, say, awakening, is that when you see your potential at such a high level, again, that limitless self that you are, and then you drop back down into your limited self, it's a rude awakening. Because it's like you're like this, again, this genie, this fantastic being that just wants to explode and enjoy life and have the vibrancy of life here, but then, we go to work, or we're stuck in a relationship that doesn't do us well, or, we exchange ourselves or enslave ourselves for success and money and all that stuff that we do here. And we get smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay. Now, people who've had NDEs, well, they just see that poison more readily than people who haven't. Simple as that. It's just a longer process of death. The NDEers have a short process of, shit, I'm dying here. So all aspects of humanity are dying in the format that it operates today, or in the reality, or how this reality exists today. So fast forward, as I get closer and closer to my mid-40s, well, a lot of things had unraveled then. Nothing really made sense. Having kids didn't make sense. Having a job, or having intelligence, or having this body didn't make sense. And I was really searching again for a deeper explanation of why we're here, why things happen the way that they do, why good people suffer, why bad people suffer, why good people have great times, and then why bad people have, great times and all that. It just didn't make sense. 1 and 1 in human equation doesn't equal 2. And it's really, really, well, confusing to somebody that's just, logic based. So as we head in, and the experience was quite amazing because it was orchestrated. Now that I look back in it, it was such a perfect orchestration of timing that was, well, it was unbelievable. How everything had to be in precise, momentum, precise synchronicity to have things happen the way they did. And again, during the time, it looked like chaos because my life was falling apart. The things leading to the event of my near-death experience, all that thing was falling apart. But looking back, it's like, wow, that was perfectly orchestrated. So jumping into the near-death experience, we were on a cruise. And you know how you go on a cruise, you go on an excursion. We were in Belize, and we were going on this excursion of inner tubing. Inner tubing on the river. And unfortunately, that inner tubing trip was sold out. But it seemed like we had to go there, or I had to go there, or I had to experience that trip. So we were walking down the planks, to get off the ship, and it's like, well, what are we going to do? We've got, 4 kids, the wife at the time. It's like, well, what are we going to do? Just walk around and shop? It's like, no. And this guy came up and it's like, hey, do you guys want to go on the inner tubing trip at half the price? It's like, wow, that sounds fantastic. Let's do it. I'm a bargain hunter. So it's like, hey, let's do it. And we did. We jumped in his car. We went on the same inner tubing trip. And that's where things started to get, say, a little funky again, going back. They ran out of life jackets. So when they were preparing for us, they ran out of life jackets for us. And I go, what? And I said, hey, I volunteered. I go, well, I'm a strong swimmer. I was a swimmer in high school. I can handle it. So I went out without a life jacket. The inner tubes, they didn't have, say, the proper inner tube for my size. So get that. So again, at the time, it's like, well, it is what it is. Let's just do it. And so we went down towards the edge of the river, and as we went, say, towards the edge of the river, and as we were getting ready to put the inner tubes into the river, nature changed. As we were walking through the jungle, you could hear the birds, you could hear the animals, the wind, and everything. There's that rustle of nature, so to speak, right? The sounds of nature. But as we stepped in, there was this like dead silence. And it's not just like no silence. It is like a scent of death. You could literally experience that something was happening, or something was going to happen. My kids even felt it. I felt it. And I'm going, what the hell's going on? I didn't equate it to death, but looking back, that's what it was. It's like, wow, It was just like this movie. It's like, what the hell's going on? Like something's going to happen. We just don't know. So to me, being a bit intuitive, I checked and double checked. I double tied my kids' life jackets just to be sure for some reason. And my wife was going, "Why are you just double checking?" It's like, I don't know. I just am. So we step into the inner tubes, they're secure. And, there was two groups because we were too big. So my wife and two of the kids went one way. Two of the kids went with me, and we're all intertangled. And the one thing that I remember the guide saying is like, interlock your feet, because if you don't, if you happen to separate, you'll get pulled into, say, another tributary of the river. And it's like, okay. So as soon as we, stepped into the rapids of the river, because it was really fast, it was high tide, high water, and it was pretty fast. We shouldn't have gone there, actually. And we just got taken away. And literally, my wife at the time went one way, the two boys and me went the other way, just within seconds. And as we did, it's like, wow, this is really fun. It was really adventurous. It was a little rocky. It was like whitewater rafting. I go, whoa, this is really going to be exciting. But then there was this huge rock that was jutting out of the river, and we tried to push away. The guide had gone the other way, by the way. There was no guide with us. And so we're just trying to swim that way because we're seeing this hole in the middle of the river jutting out of this rock, kind of like a man-sized hole. And it's just like, okay, instinct is like, we want to push away because we don't want to go down this hole. So we're, paddling and paddling, but nope, I got sucked into it. The inner tube got caught. I got sucked out of the inner tube. I got pulled down into the bowels of the river. And just in time, before that happened, I pushed my kids outside, around the rock. So they were safe. I just had the safe feeling. But for me, again, I got sucked out. I had no life jacket, so I wasn't floating. I just got pulled in. And I started to realize, and it's looked very familiar to me. I'm going, wow, I've been here before. And I could feel this resonation in my body. And I thought it was water at the time, but it literally is where your body starts to, say, disconnect from your conscious self, your physical self. Your identity of who you are starts to, you start to shake. And again, I thought it was the temperature of the water, but it really wasn't. And I looked around, and I was floating deeper and deeper, and I go, well, hell, if I'm going to get out of here, I'm going to push against, the wall. And it was a lava tube that, back in the day, now that it was filled with water, it was a river. So I was going deeper and deeper into the earth, and I'm going, shit, I'm never getting out of here. So I'm going to push against the rock, So I was just crawling up. But how long can you hold your breath? I don't know how long I was there, but it seemed like a hell of a long time. And, with all the excitement, it's like, damn, I got to do something, as you keep floating, as you get deeper and deeper. And it's like, so I pushed against the rock, and I just pulled my way through. And I could feel, my flesh tearing from my back, my fingernails, I could, I couldn't see anything, but I could just feel, peel away. And I'm going, wow. But, you don't feel the pain or anything like that because you're in another state of consciousness of trying to save yourself. And then at the time, and I could just see the glimmer of light because it's all black. I mean, just all black. There's no light down there. But there's just a tiny little spot where I had, got sucked in, and I look at it. It's like, that's the last thing I'm going to see. And, what I saw is like, it's like, okay. And you come to terms with that. And then you go, well, you love your wife, you love your kids, you love your family. But I never thought, I go, shit, I had so much to do, That's where life really becomes precious. No matter how much you hate your life, when you get to that point, it's like, no, wait. It's like, no, let me have a second chance. No, I didn't see it this way. No, look, all these realizations of possibilities that I could have had. Again, it was a fantastic life, but there was something missing, there was something wrong, and all the possibilities that you could have done at that point of awareness just like explodes. And it's like if only I had, say, one chance, but at that moment it's like there's no chance, right? It's too late, it's too gone. And you come to terms with that really quick, especially as your oxygen is running out, and well, you just let go. You bless everybody, you give them your love, and I just let go. And as I did, again, very familiar, my body just disappeared. I could see it, I could experience it. I couldn't quite see it, but I could just literally see it, float down deeper into the tunnel. And I just stayed there without having to hold on. I'm going, wow, that's really amazing. Again, my near-death experiences, I was awakened for it. Or conscious, timelessly conscious. So without a physical form, I was still conscious, which is very hard to do, by the way. And that's why a lot of NDEs, they're not as, say, vibrant. They have an experience, but they don't observe themselves observing themselves. If you've ever heard me say, notice what you notice and then notice the details of what you notice, that's where it originally comes from. It's like, how did I notice myself noticing what was around me, right? I wasn't in the movie. I was observing the movie that I was in. That's where you want to be. It's an amazing point of view, by the way. But I just floated there. And then I started ascending. And that's where it got really cool, because I was aware that I was floating through the rock, and into the river. And then I vaporized into, well, the tunnel of light. But in this scenario, I just surged through the tunnel of light. And I could feel the steps, and it was very quick. It was like a crash course through awakening. And at that level, I popped out. And from my understanding now is that when you graduate, say, the tunnel of light, there's, like, again, 13 different layers that you go through, and you pop out the other end. And at the other end, what's supposed to happen is that you're an awakened or recalibrated spirit, moved away from time and space. So you come to a great understanding of who you are. Okay? You're not supposed to come back, by the way. Nobody, from my understanding as well, or my very few have come back from that level to tell about it. Again, very few. Most NDEs, they meet their loved ones who've crossed over, or a life review, but that's about it. And then they go back down. But again, I graduated. I call it a graduation of your complete self. So what that means is that at that level, you are completely aware of who you are as a spirit. Okay? You still have physical form. Your identity is still of human form, or human consciousness, or again, of a shape of being human. At that level, well, you can transcend into any time frame. Say you wanted to go to France, and I did at that time. I wanted to go to France, and well, I was France. I don't know how to describe it, but it's the essence of being in France, right? You could do anything that you needed to or wanted to. You could experience anything that you could. You didn't need anybody. Because most here is about, well, loving somebody, or being with somebody, or latching on to somebody, or something. It wasn't like that. I didn't need anybody, because I was complete. I still had the love, of my kids without them. I still had the love of, parents and whoever without them, because you were them. They were you. You were all one. Again, this is all, say, a spatial experience of understanding, say, separations of beings, but then knowing that you are one at the same time. So it's a sense of separation, but then a sense of grandness of being complete. Okay? So as we go deeper, I started to realize that, well, the emotions that I was feeling, the sadness I was feeling for not seeing my kids anymore. It's like there was this sadness, but there was this beauty and vibrancy of the sadness. And I'm going, wow, this is really beautiful. This is real sadness. I experienced, joy. and it wasn't joy because I'm doing something, but it was joy of being something, being of value, being of like full potential, and just knowing who you are. And that joy can never be taken away, by the way, which led me into success, because I was really into money, because as a young individual, or somebody in their 40s, still young, you're about success, right? Success and money came about very differently. I didn't see success or money as an external, pot of wealth. I saw it as an internal pot of wealth that was never ending, right? You could create more and more and more. So the understanding of money, or what real success was about, it was amazing, because it's very different. Any of those things were very different. Love, again, most people crave love. And in this scenario, again, in this reality, it's limited love, it's conditional love, and all those other labels that we put about love. But where I was, the amount of love that you can feel would short circuit you physically here. You would literally explode. If you've ever had, it's like, say, like a euphoric experience, or maybe an orgasm, or whatever, how you just feel like, well, imagine that, okay? And then multiply it by maybe a few million times. That's the amount. Again, your body just doesn't have the capacity for you to understand that level of pure love. And it's not an outside source that someone is giving you. You are that source, and you're part of that source. So it's inside and outside. And again, it's the most euphoric experience. And the beautiful thing about these near-death experiences, whether I share them, say a minute after the experience, or even now, say 20 years later, or first near-death, I don't know, like say 40 years later, they feel like timeless, because, well, they were timeless. They were experienced in a timeless state. And that's one of the keys, by the way. So as I understood myself, and I was underneath, maybe, according to my wife at the time, maybe 8 minutes long, or maybe even longer. I don't know. But again, it wasn't just a few minutes, right? It was way past how long a human can survive without oxygen. But that didn't matter to me at all. It was a whole brand new world to me, right? And at that level, again, of grandness, of completeness, of possibilities, your full potential, a whole different understanding of why we're here comes about. And I learned really fast. All the possibilities of who you could be, or all the possibilities that could be, was available. But then something happened even deeper than that, something more profound. And that was, I started to lose identity of who I was as a human being, which was crazier than ever, because again, your consciousness dictates that you have a shape. Well, I was losing my shape. I was expanding into a universe. And at first, it was a death. So it was a near death, physical death, and then another death on top of that. So imagine that. And this was more profound. It wasn't sad or anything, but like an expansion, but still a death of an old identity that was very limiting. So imagine that your first death that you have, when you have a death, is like you're moving away from your limited version of who you are, your time-bound self, right? And then you move into your timeless self. Again, some of you might call it your spirit. I call you your pure presence. But that's even limiting at the level that I was at. And this is the key, and this is the difference between, say, the near-death experience that many people have and the near-death experience that I had. I had another death experience where even the limitless self that we could never experience in physical form, that died off into even a bigger potential of who we are, which was crazy, because at that time frame, it's like, this is it. This is all you could be. This is like, you wouldn't even imagine if there could be anything even more expansive. but there was, because there was no identity of self. You were a complete being. All the knowledge at that level, and it was a beautiful blue space. So imagine, you're deep in, stellar space, and everything's just brilliant. Well, and everything just illuminates, and there's billions of stars, and you're not looking at that. You are that universe. You are literally a universe. You feel like a universe. I don't know how to describe it, but you're not observing. You are both the observer. I think in my case, because I was still conscious, which was still amazing to me. It's like, okay, how was I aware of that? And then so you're both the observed and the observer at the same time. And when you get into that moment, all that ever was, or all the knowledge that ever was, even like the creation of the universe and beyond. So it goes beyond time, like no time. There is no time at that level. At a spirit level, there's still, say, a concept of time and space. At that level, it's just like a black void. But it's not black. It's just, there's no color. There's nothing, but there's everything in it. I don't know how to describe it. But again, all possibilities, all knowledge that ever was, is, and shall be, is available. At that level, again, the amount or the gravity of our potential, you can't even fathom, say, that potential. It's beyond huge, right? But I managed to somehow, step back into my spiritual or pure presence, again, having form, and then jumping back into my body where, again, a divine experience or a divine intervention, because I found myself coming into my body on a quieter side of the river, still looking at the inner tube that was getting pulled into the hole. And I was like maybe 50 feet, 50 yards above a river where, again, people who drown in those, rivers, they never get found. But I was above a river, and I'm going, how the heaven did that happen? But I knew at a deep level that's obviously something fantastic had happened, because I was looking at my hand, still bloody. I could feel the pain in my back, and I'm going, wow, this is the most beautiful experience that I've ever had, and you didn't really care about that. Afterwards, that's where my abilities started coming. So, and it was a whole story trying to get back on the ship, because we were late for the ship, because everybody was searching for me. We were late for the ship, so we missed the ship. We had to get a tender to get us to the ship so we can climb on board. But that's a whole story in itself. But through the process, as we stepped into, the ship, and then when, reunited with the family and all that, crying and all that, I could observe things. And at first I thought it was, the water or the bacteria in the water, because as we went out to dinner, well, that's where everything happened very differently. There was another matrix that I was seeing. So I wasn't seeing colors or auras or anything like that, because those are physical energy systems. I was actually starting to see your spirit. So people's spirits, and I could tap into that spirit, and I could just literally see your whole storyline. So it's not intuition or guidance or channeling or anything like that. But that was the beginning of my abilities, where I could just tap into you and just like read your blueprint, just literally like that. Over the years, through the meditations that I was drawn into, it took me about, say, 3-4 years of the dark times. And everybody goes through it, by the way, as they ascend. A Jesus would, a Buddha would, Tesla would. All those people who have, say, engineered or come into, say, fantastic possibilities or fantastic genius qualities, they go through, say, the dark nights of the soul, right? It's a death of your old self. It's a death of being here. It's a death of time and space, where you step into another consciousness and exist from there. And that's what I went through. This is where many of the concepts of what I now label exponential intelligence. Again, I didn't create exponential intelligence. What I teach is of, say, timeless knowledge, It'll be good. It was good a million years ago. It's good now. It's good a million years from now. None of the teachings that I've taught a decade ago has changed. It's gotten more refined, but again, it hasn't gone into a different path. Again, and it's just as good because it's timeless knowledge. So, and this is the culmination of what exponential intelligence is about today, right? How to be your best possible self or your limitless self in the shortest amount of time. That's what exponential intelligence is about. Some of my abilities out of that near-death experience, and I want to describe the abilities not to impress you or anything. I know my abilities. I know they're accurate. I know they're very good. Again, I don't need to prove anything to anybody. I've had enough experience, enough research of my own through hundreds of thousands of people that I've worked on. That I know it works. Again, I'm not here to prove anything, but I'm here to open up the possibilities of what you can do, okay? Because we all have these abilities. We're all the same. I just happen to, say, jump into the process or have that deep desire to really want to know and, just go to the four corners of the earth or even beyond to really understand what human is about, right? And that's how bad I wanted it. And well, I did get it. And here I am. So some of my abilities is that, well, I can read or analyze anybody. You name it. Health issues. And by the way, I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to cure or anything like that. But I can see what's going on. I can read your story. I can read your generational patterns. I go deep down into, say, your DNA structure, what we call, epigenetics. The underlying reason of why your life is the way it is. Not only can I read and analyze it, I can edit and change it for you. The logistics on how I do it, not sure exactly, but it works for a ton of people. Back in the day when I first had it, was getting into my abilities, was that I would take maybe an hour, hour and a half to change somebody's, lives, whatever it might be. But now that can be done in, say, a matter of seconds for individuals. So it's not, again, this technology is not time-based. I can analyze you. I don't need to see a picture. I don't need to know your name. I do Moss on Sundays where I analyze individuals and the people just go scan me. They don't even have to use their real name. So the science behind it, because there is a science. It's not woo-woo shit or anything like that. There's a logical science. And just briefly, it's like everybody has a personal frequency signature that you resonate. And I'm a computer programmer by trade, by the way. That's what I used to do. Computer programmer by trade. Very successful. And I lost all that wealth because it was ill-defined. And now, obviously, recaptured it. Recaptured, say, the vibrancy of youth. Because, again, I'm not in time. I'm 60 and still vibrant and healthier than ever before, inside and out. Relationships, off the charts with my kids, and everybody else, loved ones, all those off the charts, health, wealth, all those aspects, again, spherical abundance. Coming back to my abilities, well, I could analyze anything or anybody. I don't need to know who you are. If you go, I have a friend, right there, I can read them or analyze them and tell you their life story. So that's how accurate it is. And again, you can challenge me if you want. It doesn't matter. Many people do. You can say it's bullshit if you want. That's fine too. But then look at your life and analyze your life. If you're not liking your life, well, then maybe there's something that you could look into that could be more expansive for you instead of limiting yourself. Even if you're that scientist, it's like sometimes, scientists go, well, prove it. Well, I'm not the scientist. You guys are. You should come up with solutions or ways to, say, understand my abilities. Okay? Simple as that. Rather than going, well, I don't believe it. You have to prove it. Again, like I said, you're the scientist. So you have to figure that out. So when I talk about I can analyze anybody, it's not about hands-on healing or energy medicines or anything like that. It's way, way, way different because one, my abilities are not time-based. It comes from a timeless space. I don't channel or anything. I literally go into that timeless space. And what I do there is not, heal you or help you awaken to your potential at a physical level, but literally I change you or adapt you or shift you into, say, a higher level of consciousness. And as you see yourself from that higher level, well, that's where you tend to heal yourself or transform who you are.